Pastor Brandon and I have been talking about empathy, and he said, Karl, would you talk about Sabbath and empathy? How do those two relate? Got my imagination going. I want to share with you a few of my thoughts about how Sabbath helps us develop empathy. First, what is empathy? I think about empathy as basically being able to put yourself in someone's shoes, experience life as they experience life without necessarily losing your own perspective. When I think about Sabbath, I think about three purposes that God has for the Sabbath. One is rest, one is remembering, and one is restoring. I think all three of those purposes help us develop empathy. Let me begin with rest. When we rest, we stop doing things and we enjoy what's around us. We pay attention to what's around us. We listen to what's around us. And listening to what's around us is essential for empathy. Let me give you an example about myself of what I've learned in my marriage. If I'm doing things and my wife is talking to me, she does not trust that I'm listening, even though I tell her I am, while I'm doing these things. But if I stop doing, I turn towards her, look at her, then she knows I'm listening, and she will talk even more. So resting, stopping doing, listening to nature, listening to others, listening to yourself, listening to God, helps us expand our imagination and see things from another person's perspective. A second purpose of Sabbath is to remember. And the main activity we do to remember is we come to worship. And in worship, we remember God and hear the stories of God. And hearing life from God's perspective, hearing stories of God's relationship with people from Scripture, hearing other people tell their stories or even bring their prayer requests to God in worship expands our minds, expands our imaginations as we begin to see life not from our own perspective, but from the experiences and perspectives of others, especially God. So worship expands us and allows us to see things from different perspectives. And the third purpose of Sabbath I mentioned is restoring. And when you think about it, listening is restoring. I think about God. When God rested on the seventh day, God didn't just stop doing and then isolate himself and go off into the highest heaven and let earth and all creation function on its own. No, God was present. God enjoyed creation. God was listening to the beautiful world God made. God sought out Adam and Eve and walked with them and talked with him. So God's resting was an active resting, a relational resting, and it helped him and all creation, Adam and Eve, continue to live in a restored relationship. Now, you may find it funny that I'm using the word restore when this happened before sin. But even before sin, time together is needed for there to be deeper relationships, deeper intimacy. When we stop doing our work, when we rest, we spend time together with people. So when we rest, think about relationships that are important to you. Spend time with these people. I remember when my kids were little, they'd come to us on Sunday and say, "Dad, we're bored. Dad, what can we do?" I say, "It's wonderful. You're bored. Let's be creative. Let's figure something out." And then we'd kind of make up our own games or come up with some new idea. We didn't do just the video games or screen time. We thought of other ways to use ourselves and be in relationship to each other. And helped develop our relationships with me as a father and my children. So spend time with people in ways that restore those relationships and build intimacy. I'm so glad Pastor Brandon asked me to talk about this because I believe in the power of empathy, the grace that empathy is. I also know that in our society right now, empathy is on the wane. Empathy is at a premium. We need more empathy. And so let's follow God by increasing our capacity for empathy and offering empathy in our lives. Sabbath can help us do that.